So UT Austin, and then before that, I was Grand Canyon University, and the audiences were just great and really friendly and terrific. And I have to tell you that when you meet conservative students, they are several IQ points ahead of left-wing students. I mean, I will show you some left-wing students on the show today, and I will tell you, but these kids are so impressive and so dialed in and knowledgeable and thoughtful, and it really is, for someone like me who's going to shuffle off the scene in about, I give myself about 30 minutes. It's nice to know that people will be behind fighting the corner who are just so able to do it. But the thing that really disturbs me is again and again, we do these Q&As, and again somebody stands up and says, my teacher does this, they won't let me talk, they attack me, they threaten me to take my grades away, they make me go to re-education if I say things like men and women are the same. I just keep hearing these stories. There was one high school kid there who said he's being forced to walk out for an anti-Second Amendment demonstration, and he doesn't agree, but he's being forced to walk out. And another kid who says, and they can never get the good security. I mean, at Austin they did. They had the police out there and everything, and they weren't needed, but they were there. But they can't get good rooms for the events, and just all kinds of things. And I started to think about this. When I went in and made this speech, as I was walking in, it was kind of about Hollywood and the way they control the narrative. As I was walking in, I started to think about the Truman Show. Remember the Truman Show? The Truman Show was Jim Carrey, and he played a guy whose entire life is a reality TV show, only he doesn't know it. So he's in this town, and the town looks like a real little town, but it's actually a TV set, and all his friends and his wife are actually actors. And it's a profitable show, so they want to keep it on the air, but they have to keep him in this town, because if he leaves the town, then he finds out that it's all a fraud. And so what they do is, from his earliest childhood, they scare him. So every time he tries to get away or do something, they dissuade him from adventure. They dissuade him from challenges. They say, don't go over the bridge, Truman. You don't know what's going to be over there. Don't go on vacation. There's one very funny scene where he goes into a travel agent, and you know how travel agents have posters on the wall, see sunny Florida and all this stuff. Instead, they have posters of airplanes getting hit by lightning, and it just says, this could happen to you. So they just terrify him all the time. Here's a brief scene of Carrie trying to get his wife to just leave and go on an adventure, and how her job is to dissuade him, and she does.
I want to get away, see some of the world, explore.
Honey, you want to be an explorer. This'll pass. We all think like this now and then.
It's a really good movie. I actually like it, and I remember it really well, which doesn't always happen with movies. And I started to think that's what these professors are doing to these kids, basically. They're teaching them to live in a fake world, a world where socialism works, a world where America is a bad country, a world where racism is really still as big a problem as it always was. And when the kids try to escape, what they do to them is they frighten them. They say, don't listen to those ideas. Those ideas are fascist. Don't let that speaker come to campus. That guy's a white supremacist. Don't even think about that. Don't have free speech, because they say to him, language is violence, which is like saying dirt is air. I mean, it's like if you're talking, you're not fighting. I mean, that's one of the wonderful things about talking. And they've created this false environment, this false philosophical world, and they just keep the narrative of fear up. This Starbucks thing that's happening is a perfect example. We're in a country of 300 million people. The fact that two guys got turfed from a coffee shop is not a news story. It's not a news story. It wasn't about race. It was about the fact that they were misbehaving. They shouldn't have been there. They were breaking the rules. They didn't go along with what the police said. The police come in and they say, sir, leave the building. You leave the building. You want to complain later, you complain to the force, but you don't tell the cop that you're not going to leave and then expect not to get arrested. It is just creating this narrative of fear that something terrible is going on in a country where nothing terrible is going on. I mean, this is obviously, nobody's perfect. No country is perfect. It has nothing to do with that. But in real life, things are going pretty well. In fact, if two guys being turfed from a Starbucks is a news story, things are going great. Things are going great. That means that people aren't being blown up. It means that people aren't killing each other. It means that the economy's humming along. If you're covering two guys who are asked to leave Starbucks, Donald Trump is doing a fan-freaking-tastic job. That's what they should be saying. That's what Trump should be saying. Trump should be saying, if that's what you're covering, if that's your news story. So, it's just, somebody called this, the guys at FIRE called it unlearning liberty. They're unlearning how to be free, how to talk free. And just the other day at City University of New York School of Law, it's called CUNY School of Law, there was a speaker, a law professor named Josh Blackman, and he went in to give a speech on the importance of free speech on campus because they didn't like some of his opinions, these social justice warriors. I hate to even associate the word justice with these kids. But like they show up and they start demonstrating against him because I think he was in favor. He said it was right for Trump to rescind the DACA order because it wasn't legal. These are kids in law school, right? These are not undergrads. These are kids in law school. And Blackman, as you will see, is as mild-mannered as it is possible to be. And he goes in and he gives this speech, and he's talking to them about why he thinks it was right to rescind DACA because it was against the law. Listen to this exchange.
And were a member of Congress, I would vote for the DREAM Act. My position is that the policy itself was not consistent with the rule of law, which teaches a lesson, right? The lesson is this. You can support something as a matter of policy, but then find that the law doesn't permit it. And then the answer is to change the law.
The law. Why don't you support people? Why don't you support people?
The law, right? That's a very good thing. You are in law school, right? And it's a bizarre thing to say, f the law when you're in law school.
It's not. Welcome to CUNY. But you chose CUNY, didn't you? Because you knew what would happen if you came here.
Well, if you let me speak, So f the law, right? That's a good mantra. F the law.
How many of them?
You do, and I'm actually very impressed. Let me say this: I'm actually impressed that there's so many of you. You can be anywhere right now, and you chose to come out here and exercise your constitutional rights. You want to exercise your rights, and I'll do the same.
F the law. That's what they were shouting at him. F the law. And he said, F the law. That's wonderful. You're in law school, right? And if the girl has a sign that says free speech is not a shield for hate, which in fact it is. Part of what defines us is what we hate, and we can speak about what we hate. And, if it defines us in a way that's ugly, well, then don't like us. Then, you can reject people. But they're not letting him speak. Now, he talks about the rule of law, and I want you to listen to the logic of this one kid. We're talking about the Truman Show, right? We're talking about kids who are living in a false America, an America that doesn't exist, an America that was built for TV so that TV can sell a narrative of racism and trouble that will get Democrats elected. They are living in the Truman Show America, okay? And they have to be kept afraid. And I want you to listen to the logic of this kid as he responds to Professor Blackman talking about the rule of law. Now, let me just pause here for a minute. And Blackman explains this himself, but I won't put this in. The reason we talk about the rule of law, and the reason I talk about the rule of law on the border, that it's not about whether a guy is Mexican or not, it's about the rule of law, is that if you don't have the rule of law, then it's capricious, right? It's whether, you have $1 billion, then you get treated one way. You don't have that money, you get treated another way. We have a nation of laws, not of men. I think it was John Adams who said that because that means we're all equal before the law. If the laws don't count, then who decides what happens on any given day? It's like every given day is different. Okay, so he talks about the rule of law. Listen to this kid's logic.
When you say rule of law, now what are you specifically referring to? Because that actually invokes messages of law and order propaganda created by Roger Stone, promoted for Nixon, and brought again for Reagan, and then once again, here we go with Trump. So whenever you're saying that, you're bringing that into an isolated moment in time, but historically, it goes back to the 30s when people were killed based on a certain kind of propaganda. So whenever you say rule of law, it invokes a lot of reactive emotion. So I would say it would probably be better to choose a different kind of language so that you don't incite that, because then you're also accountable and responsible for using that language that has that weight. Don't you think?
That kid should be kicked out of school. I mean, he should be kicked out of school. So his logic was when you say rule of law, it reminds him of law and order, and people he doesn't like Nixon used to sell law and law and order maybe got people killed in the 30s when people were calling for law and order. So you're responsible for people getting killed under the guise of law and order because you said rule of law. I mean, that's like saying, you said rule of law. That reminds me of Law and Order. Law and Order is a television show. I'm Sam Waterston. I mean, that's the logic that he's using. And now, it's obvious bullying. It's obviously a kind of emotional bullying. You said that. You better be careful of every word you say, because every word you say gets people killed. It's obviously a kind of emotional bullying, but it also is his fear. It's the kid's fear. It is the Truman Show. Do not step out of this little box and discover that the America we taught you about, the America that will get the people we want elected, the America that gives us power and prestige, isn't real. It's not there. It is about people posing in Starbucks on YouTube and people going on and discoursing about that as if that were important, because it's not. Because if they can get you to believe that this is a racist country where you're in danger when you go into a Philadelphia Starbucks, which must be filled with all kinds of people of all kinds of colors. And of course, the university is only where it starts and only where people learn to accept this stuff. It's only where they go to unlearn liberty and live in this fake world. In California, they are proposing now a bill. There's a bill before the assembly that would make it an unlawful business practice to engage in a transaction intended to result, or that results, in the sale or lease of goods. I'm reading this from the law. Lease of goods or services to any consumer that engage in sexual orientation change efforts. That includes books and counseling. So if I give somebody the Bible and I tell them, before you live the sexual life you're living, you might want to look at this book and learn a thing or two, California wants to make that illegal. Now, I don't believe that's ever going to stand before the Supreme Court, but just the fact that they do it lets you know something. It lets you know that wherever the left takes power, they become tyrants. Wherever the left takes power, they become tyrants. Why? Because they're living in a false world. You don't have to be a tyrant when you're telling the truth. You don't have to beat people up. If I say to somebody, I am a man, the sentence, I am a man, I don't care if the person says you are a girl, you are a black woman. What do I care? What do I care? But if I say to somebody, I am a black woman, I've got to stop them from saying the obvious. It's pretty obvious to me that you're a white man, right? I've got to stop them from saying it. As long as you're living in a fake universe, you have got to have that silence. Hillary Clinton, let's take this all the way to the top, right? Where first we're talking about universities, now we're talking about the state of California. But let's take it all the way to the woman who was just this close to being president of the United States. And the reason that I have never lost a night's sleep, not one, for voting for Donald Trump is exactly this. Hillary was obsessed with Citizens United, right? With overturning the Supreme Court decision that said that my pal David Bossie, who runs this little film industry, Citizens United, could make a film against Hillary. He made a film against Hillary. They tried to ban it on the basis that it was illegal campaign spending. The Supreme Court, they said it's corporate spending because Citizens United was the name of a corporation. The Supreme Court said no. Bossie doesn't lose his right to criticize people politically because he's a corporation. They made a movie celebrating Hillary Clinton. This is Hillary Clinton's movie I'm going to play. Hillary Clinton's movie where they celebrated the fact that she was out to get Citizens United. And a woman named Christina Shake, I guess it's pronounced, was a Hillary, staffer. And she makes this movie and she explains, you don't understand. You don't understand how shocking this was. Citizens United started because someone attacked Hillary. It's amazing. Listen to her.
One of the things that people don't really realize is Citizens United has actually started from a conservative organization that wanted to bring down Hillary Clinton's candidacy because they didn't like who she is, they don't like what she stands for.
It started with Hillary the Movie, a negative political documentary about then presidential candidate Hillary Clinton.
The government blocked it from TV last year because it was made with corporate money.
And they took that fight all the way to the Supreme Court.
The Supreme Court today struck down restrictions on political spending.
Citizens United changed our democracy at its core. The most powerful and most connected American corporations and special interests had the right to spend as much money as they wanted to get elected candidates that they thought best represented their agenda.
So think about that for a minute. What she's saying, this was a video made by people who didn't like what Hillary stood for and so didn't want you to vote for her. That's called democracy. And on top of it, it's all a sham because Hillary Clinton raised twice as much money as Donald Trump did Some of Donald Trump's money came from his own pocket, like $66 million worth of it, and his donors. Clinton's campaign received 16% of its money in donations of $200 or less. So from people, Trump's campaign received 26%. A quarter of his was coming from little folks sending in $200. When I say little, I just mean that they didn't have the kind of money that a corporation has. So she was the corporate candidate. It was all a scam. It was all about the fact. It was all about the fact that they actually do think it is an evil that someone would stand against Hillary Clinton and what she stands for and try to stop her. They actually thought that was suppressible speech. It is an amazing worldview. And why? Because they're living in this fake universe where anybody who disagrees with them must be evil, or else they have to look at the world in a new way. They have to leave the Truman universe. This was just yesterday, and it's kind of an unimportant little cut, but it just gives you a glimpse of the point of view. Everybody who can is piling on Sean Hannity because he didn't say that he knew Michael Cohen and had Donald Trump's attorney and had consulted him a couple of times. And I said, he probably should have done that strategically. That would have been the strategic thing to do. But if he had a couple of legal questions about real estate that he asked Michael Cohen, I don't think it's anybody's business, and certainly doesn't change where he was going to stand. Does anybody think that Sean Hannity was saying, I'm only supporting Donald Trump because I asked a real estate question of Michael Cohen? I think we know that Sean Hannity supports Donald Trump. So I think it's completely ridiculous, given the fact that unlike Sean, who is a commentator, all these objective news guys are tied in with the Democratic Party, hip and thigh. They're just completely in with the Democratic Party, and they're supposed to be objective. Sean isn't even supposed to be objective. So they're beating up on him. And this is Anderson Cooper and a panel. And just play the cut. It's amazing.
There is a conflict for Fox News because, obviously during the day they have, folks like Shepard Smith, Brett Baer, who are doing reporting. And yet, the nighttime is much more opinion-based.
Yeah, it's almost too convenient to say that, oh, no, we're going to use a kind of nuanced semantics argument. I'm an opinion journalist, not actually a journalist. I'm not to be regarded and have the credibility as others, but please believe every single word that I say.
Wait. So she's expressing her opinion that opinions are no good on news shows. That's what she's doing. And the reason I played that is what's so telling about it is that she doesn't know it's an opinion. She doesn't know the difference. They don't Sean Hannity would never say, believe every word I say. He's an opinion journalist. He knows that people are not going to agree with him. But they don't actually think their opinions are opinions. And they don't actually think that their worldview is challengeable. And the fact that Sean gets up there and is a very, very powerful voice for Trumpism and Trump, that's what they're bothered by. It's that people are listening to his opinion more than they're listening to their opinion, which in their mind isn't an opinion. It really is. It's even part of this Russia collusion thing. It is part of the mindset that goes into this Russia collusion thing, that somehow Trump's victory, the victory of the people in the Midwest, the victory of the people who were overlooked during 8 years of Obama, that somehow this is illegal. Somehow this is criminal. Trump went off on them again yesterday. Let's just play that cut and we'll wrap this up. But Trump went off on them again yesterday, and there was this atmosphere of shock. Trump goes on a rampage, on a rant against it. Listen to what he says.
This was really a hoax created largely by the Democrats as a way of softening the blow of a loss, which is a loss that, frankly, they shouldn't have had from the standpoint that it's very easy for them. They have a tremendous advantage in the Electoral College. And this is what it is, and this is where it came from. You look at the kind of money that was paid. Probably some went to Russia. You look at Podesta having a company in Russia where nothing happened and people don't talk about it. You look at the fact that their server, the DNC server, was never gotten by the FBI. Why did the FBI take it? The FBI takes what they want. They go in, they wouldn't get the server. This is a hoax. As far as the investigation, nobody has ever been more transparent than I have instructed our lawyers. Be totally transparent.
He's basically right. I mean, he's basically right. This has gone on for over a year with no evidence of any kind of collusion. The whole idea was kind of stupid to begin with. You know, that's basically 10, Rocky and Bullwinkle spies trying to put out propaganda on YouTube who didn't even know what they were doing. It didn't have any effect on the election at all. The whole thing is utterly absurd. But when you are living in a Truman world, when you are living in a fake world, you have got to keep everybody frightened. You've got to keep everybody afraid so that they don't go off the reservation and find out where reality lies.